What's up everybody, this is Blockus, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to use Create.3's building tools, and those include the schematic tools, the zappers, the extendo grip, all of the items that you need to make awesome builds using Create.3. So let's get started. The extendo grip is a tool that lets you reach far away and perform actions, build, break things from a longer distance. So as you see, I can press these buttons right here and control that contraption over there. But if I switch to my empty hand, I can't really do anything unless I get a lot closer. You can also use this tool by switching it to your secondary hand, and this way you can actually build with it and you can use any other tool at a longer distance. So this tool isn't activated yet because we haven't gotten to it yet, but as you see, this extendo grip is going to extend the range of everything. So for example, you can grab your wrench and do things from pretty far away. And that's all I know about the extendo grip. Let's go ahead and move on to the symmetry wand. The symmetry wand is a very nifty builder's tool that will allow you to build symmetrical contraptions, and who of us hasn't needed to do that every now and then? You can place it wherever you want, and you'll see that the structure is going to be built on both sides of it. So whatever I do now on these sides is going to be replicated over there, and you can go up as long as you are on this side. So basically you need to build what you need to build and then remove it when you're done. And if you want to change the orientation or anything, you just put it in your hand again, and then you can place it by facing the other way. So if I face it this way, now the symmetry is going to be like that. If I face it this way, the symmetry is going to be like this. So this tool is extremely versatile. I think that if you're trying to build a castle or a dome or one of those really giant structures, then this thing is a dream. The handheld block zapper is a very interesting tool that lets you select anything you want by left-clicking it, and then you can place it by right-clicking it. This is the most basic way of using this tool, but we have a bunch of options, so let's go ahead and look at them. If you crouch and right-click, you'll see this window appear right here. So have a selection in your hand before by left-clicking something, and then open the configuration window. Right here, we have a bunch of patterns that we can use. For example, we can do a checkerboard instead of a solid selection where everything you click places a block. With a checkerboard, the thing is going to make sure that you are not placing blocks next to each other. Even if you accidentally hit that spot, it's going to correctly place it in a checkerboard only when you hit that spot, which is very interesting. I honestly don't know where this could be useful, but nonetheless, it is very cool. Now let's look at the other options. You can have an inverted checkerboard, which looks, where the blocks are attached to each other diagonally like that. And you can also do, let's see, what other options do we have? We have these percentage rolls, which means that on 50%, it means that with every 2 times you try to place something, a block is going to appear. Sometimes it comes in on the first attempt and sometimes on the second attempt. So it is another weird feature, but I think it's cool perhaps for randomizing natural builds or something like that. You want to just randomly click and these blocks will appear in a sort of natural randomized looking way, especially if you go 75 or 25. It's very interesting, and I would be pretty interested to hear what the builders out there think about these really cool tools. Now before I close this window, we have a couple of other options here. To be quite honest with you, I don't understand these two, and if you have any information about them, please let me know. But other than that, I know what this one does, which is another cool feature, is if you turn on replace mode, what it's going to do is it's going to replace the block that you're pointing at. So as you see, it went underground here. So if we remove replace mode, we're going to be able to place things right here. And if we go back to replace mode, we can just replace whatever block we point at. And I just replaced that, and it's not really affecting this contraption. But basically what this is a very cool way of fixing things you messed up, of making adjustments. For example, this is one thing where if I break the glass to change the material, I might have some things break in this contraption. But with this tool, I can actually make these adjustments very easily. Now, because we have that 50% selected, it's not doing it very consistently, but if we go back and hit solid, I can just switch this entire thing with slime if I want to. I can do whatever I want with ease. So I really think this is a very powerful tool, and all of these Create Point 3 building tools are extremely underrated. So I highly encourage you to check them out if you like to build stuff. And now it's time to look at the Handheld Worldshaper, which can be used using the exact same controls as the block zapper. You left click to select your block, and then you right click to execute your selection. Now this one has a lot more options. If you hold the shift button and right click, and normally when I say that, if you're up in the air, you just need to hold both the shift and space button. That's a nifty little tip there. Now, this one, as I said, has a bunch of options, a lot more than the block zapper. You have a shape, which is cuboid, sphere, and cylinder, and this is going to define this shape that you see. Now, let me bring it up to the top by changing this to place, and I'll explain these in a second here. But as you see, this is just a little rectangular cubic shape, basically a flat surface. Now, if I go and pick sphere, you'll see that it's going to change into this. Essentially, it's a Minecraft sphere. Let's try and place it above so we can take a look at it. And I think you see what I mean. It's like a little spherical shape. It's a cube with the corners taken off. Now, if we change it to a cuboid, you will see that is just a block. Now, when we look at these settings, there are a bunch of options here that are called tool, there's placement, and there is the pattern that we had earlier. Now, these work exactly the same way as with the block zapper. You can choose a checkerboard, inverted checkerboard, and that changes the pattern of how you place things. So let's try it with the sphere, for example, and you can place the spheres in a checkerboard pattern. This just takes this to the next level and makes it a lot more powerful. Now, if we switch these options, we can pick replace, for example, and now what's going to happen is this is not going to work unless it finds something there. While if we change it to overlay, it's going to start placing things above ground. And if we change it to clear, it's going to erase things. So as you see, I'm kind of jumping in between these different settings because I myself am not super experienced with this, and all I know how to do now is to switch between these options and see what they do and tell you. I haven't yet used this to make something useful, but as you can see, the options are all quite straightforward and obvious. So I hope that my explanation hasn't been haphazard and all over the place and that you can actually use this. But if you have any questions about it, please let me know, because I'm sure I'm gonna keep playing with it and see what I can do with it after the video. And now it's time for the best Create Point 3 building contraptions in my personal opinion. And these are everything that has to do with schematics, because these let you copy any structure and then take it in a file and send it to friends, or move it to another world, or even clone it 1,000 times here, move it to another area in your world, move it on a server. There's so many things you can do with the NBT files that come out of this. And the best part is that this is one of the easiest things to use in Create. It's so simple, it's unbelievable. So stick around, and as a bonus, you'll be able to use all the MBTs that I'm going to include in the description, which are basically every MBT I included on my channel. You can take all these creations and play with them. So let me show you. This is super simple. We just have to pick two corners around the structure that will define it. And the way I like to make this easier is by placing a block somewhere safely outside the structure. And we're going to be able to adjust the selection later, so don't worry about putting it in the wrong place. Now we just right click this while we're holding the quill, and you see we can move around freely right now. And we can even switch to another tool. We can go back and break this because we don't want it. And whenever we go back to the schematic and quill, you're going to find that our selection is saved. So in the same way, I like to go to the other direction and start placing blocks in a way that guarantees that I got the entire structure, even if I go a bit farther. Now I'm going to add another block, and then we go back to the quill and right click again. Now I like to go back, obviously, and break these blocks so that we have only our structure. And now we can look at the selection and make sure that we didn't select too much space, because let's say you're giving this to a friend and they're trying to add it to their house or to their base, and they'll find out that it's smaller than the selection. So the easiest way to do this is to face the side that you want to make smaller, which let's start with this one. And then you can scroll with your mouse scroll to, if you're scrolling down, it's going to bring this side towards you. And if you scroll up, you are going to push it in that direction. So I can go right there and then push it one more block. And here we go. Now let's see this side. Does it need any tightening? Yes, it does. Also one block. So we just point here and we make it fit. This one is huge because I scrolled too much a little bit earlier. And we can push this by scrolling up all the way until it meets. And if we go too far, we just pull it back. No harm done. And I can go to this side. And now that everything is defined, I can just right click again and it'll give me a prompt where it will say, it will ask me to type a name, and I'll type it. I'm having a problem typing. Hitting storage schematic. So as I did that, this immediately is stored in a folder named schematics in your Minecraft install folder. Now, if you want to use this and this is saved and ready in your system, here's what you need to do. You're going to go and place a schematic table, and it looks like I have one placed right here. You're going to right click it and you're going to bring an empty schematic and place it here. Now you hover over this part and it's going to show you all of the schematics saved on your computer. And as you see, I'm a little obsessed with this thing. You can scroll with your mouse to find the schematic that you have saved. So let's see. This is the hidden storage schematic that I just created. And as you see, the system is going to add underscores to the file name, even if you leave it with spaces. Now that I've made my selection, I can hit the checkbox or the check button right here, and we're going to get the schematic. And this schematic is something that is extremely easy to use. You just pick it and now you can point like that and put it wherever you want. Now I'd like to point that if you hit the control button, it's going to bring it next to you. So if you're like up in the air and you want to put it right here, you hit control and it's right here. So I can place it basically here, as you see. But let's say I hit right click and I don't want it here. I can just go down there and place it down there by pressing the Alt button first, hold on to it, and then go to this third deploy option. And I'm going to cover all of these options in a second, so stick with me. Now, if I hit the deploy option, we're back to being able to deploy it where we want. And if I right click, it's just going to bring the entire structure. Now, as you see, it looks like I have made a mistake when I cloned initially, because I had probably pointed in a direction and scrolled like crazy, so that we ended up cloning a bunch of the ground right here. And that's a common issue, and the best way to avoid it is to be more careful, because I did this a little bit too quickly. Now, let's look at the options that are available to us. Basically, if you press and hold Alt, there will be a menu that expands on the bottom showing you what each of these options do. And you can scroll through them with your mouse scroll. Now, the first one is Move XZ. And just so you know, the way we're going to interact with the structure is always going to be the same. We're pointing at one of the sides, we're holding control, and then we are scrolling with our mouse. So since this is Move XZ, it means we're only going to be able to move it on the horizontal axis. So I can push it like that and pull it, and I can do that on all four sides. But if I go to the top, for example, nothing should happen. And that is correct. I'm scrolling and nothing's happening. And let me... Yes, so if you switch away from the tool and get back to it, that's not an issue as well. Now, if you press Alt and go here, this is Move Y, which is pretty straightforward. It does the same thing, except along the Y-axis, so you can move this thing up and down before you place it. And we already covered the deploy. It's if you want to move it and change your placement completely. And then you have rotate, which again works the same way. You can point and rotate by scrolling back and forth. You can rotate any structure. And I mean, these things are so powerful if you are a builder. Now let's see. The last option here is flip, which lets you flip the entire thing along its axis, and it depends on which side you're looking at. So as you can see, we can flip, And now that we're done placing it exactly how we want, we go to this check mark where it says print and select it, and now we just right click one last time, and this contraption is completely cloned and placed here. And now it's time to look at the Schematicanon, which is by far the most interesting and least useful item of these, but it's so extremely cool, which is why I saved it to the end, because it'll basically show you all the layers of something that you've built. And for the sake of that example, I'm going to be using this structure, which, because I'm not a great builder, I want you to imagine it to be a very awesome, magnificent modern house. And I have already saved the schematic for this thing, and I think I called it something along these lines. Let's see, what is it? Yeah, I forgot what it is. So what you need to do is you go pick the spot and deploy, right? So now this thing is here, but before you, and without going and hitting print, we're actually going to go and finish everything on the cannon. You right click the cannon and you place a bunch of gunpowder here, and it looks like it takes 4 to fill it. Now we get the schematic that we just had and place it right here. Make sure it's deployed before, as I did, and now when we hit the play button, it says ready. Now I want to remind you before I get started that this chest right here has all the building blocks necessary to create this thing. The exact number. If you have less than that, the cannon is going to reach that point and stop building. And the purpose of this cannon, I believe, is both fun and to show you the layers of the entire structure. So let me not make this any longer than it needs to. We're going to go and hit this play button, and as you see, the cannon will start to build everything. It's very interesting. I mean, I haven't seen anything like this. I've seen people make really extensive animations to produce an effect like that, but this cannon idea is very cool, and I think that there's so much art that can be done with it that I personally can't think of, but I'm hoping that by showing you how to use it, you can unleash your imagination and do some really cool things with it. And this is all I wanted to share with you today. I apologize if some of the items were a little bit vague after I explained them, but that's mainly because these tools are new to me as well, and I will hopefully be using them more and more. So if you stick around and watch my videos, hopefully you'll also learn to use them better and better with time. And with that, as usual, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.